You're listening to Tin Pod Radio.
This is Erin Klein and
Jordan Middleton,
from Crime Crazy, where we prove
that we know nothing about our legal system,
but we're still crazy for a good true crime story.
So my journey, I guess, with cosplay and with anime in general kind of started when I was a senior in high school. So back in 2011, actually. I didn't really get into anime until around that time, and it was actually some of my friends at school wanted me to join the costume crew at school because they were in that. I don't really know why they wanted me to join it. I didn't know anything about making costumes or I didn't know that cosplay even existed at that point. But I think they just knew that I was we all had that similar interest in, nerdy things, and that was just what they were doing. And so they kind of dragged me into that. Eventually I said, yes, I'll join the costume crew. So that was kind of where I learned, the basics, I guess, of what clothes are and how to use a sewing machine and, anything about clothing or any of that in general. But I still had no idea that cosplay existed. I was just there in the background, didn't really do a whole lot of big intricate things, just whatever they had. It was kind of the end of the year at that point, but I didn't really know that anime conventions or any of that stuff existed until that summer when they invited me to go to my first convention at Otakon. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I don't know what this is. I've never heard of this. I don't know what anime conventions are. I don't know what any of this is, but sure, I'll go. I'll see what this is. And I ended up really loving it. And I only went for one day the first year. But I just knew I need to come back next year. This is great. I'm sure my brother would love this. I need to take him. And just seeing everything there is what is this kind of new world that I just had no idea existed. This is all these things that I love in one place, and so the next year, I told my brother, oh, we should go to this next year. I'm sure you would love it. And he was like, yeah, we should dress up next year. And I was like, all right, sure. I don't know how he found out that cosplay existed, but I guess we were just both yeah, that's a thing that people do, I guess. Let's try it. So, and we were always both very creative people and crafty and good at art and stuff, so we kind of wanted to try out that kind of big build type thing. So we ended up doing a Full Metal Alchemist cosplay as Ed and Alphonse for our first year, and that was kind of the start of everything. We both just kind of jumped into that, hey, this is a thing, let's try it, and here we are 7 years later. I'm definitely more into it than he is at this point, but he helps me do some more bigger prop type things, but that was pretty much how we started it.
So who was Ed and who was Alphonse?
I was Ed and he was Alphonse, so he kind of he likes to make kind of the bigger, more weapony, armory type things, so he wanted to try making a big build, and they weren't that great, it was just kind of made out of cardboard and stuff like that, but it was okay for a first try, I think.
I'm just now starting to rewatch Full Metal Alchemist. I haven't watched it in a long time.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah. So that was your first cosplay, that costume?
Yes, that was my first.
Do you remember much about that first experience? Do you remember the first time somebody asked you for a picture?
Yeah, I think knowing Full Metal Alchemist was a pretty big series, kind of just at all times it's kind of a big, well-known series. So I definitely remember people asking, people stopping us and asking for photos, and we were, it was really exciting for us because, we had really never been to a convention before, essentially. I was just kind of in the background the first year, and I didn't do anything or know what was going on. But that second year, it was our first big real experience and being dressed up, and it was really exciting. Of course we want you to take pictures of us. And we ended up finding a bunch of other Fullmetal Alchemist cosplayers just kind of randomly and asking them if we could take pictures with them and stuff like that. And it was definitely a really nice experience.
Do you still have that costume?
I do still have it. I haven't worn it since that time, basically. I know the Alphonse is kind of in pieces in a giant garbage bag in my costume room, but I still have the Ed costume. I still have every costume I've ever made, actually, because I just I don't want to sell them. I kind of just want to keep them and look back on them and be like, oh yeah, that was the thing that I did.
Having like your older costumes, do you pull like the older ones out every so often, or do you usually not wear them?
Some of the really older ones like that I haven't worn since like the first time or the first few times, but there are a few that I actually I still have them, but I look at them and I want to remake them at this point. And so the characters are definitely characters that I still am interested in cosplaying, but those outfits specifically, I definitely would not wear them at this point because I know I can kind of make them better because at that point I didn't really know what I was doing and how I was making them and what kind of fabrics I was using, so I would definitely be more interested in remaking them if I were going to rewear them again. But the more recent ones that I've made, I do like to try and rewear them a few times if I can.
Do you usually, like, when you go to conventions, do you usually have, like, multiple costumes?
Yeah, since, the past few years, so I've been going to conventions for around 7 years, and, the first 4 or 5 years or so, I would really only do a few per convention, but lately and more recently, I tend to do 2 per day, I would say, at a convention. One in the morning, one in the evening, on the 2 main days, Friday and Saturday, and then kind of just one on Thursday, maybe one on Sunday. So a good total of at least 5 to 6 per weekend.
One thing I've been told by several cosplayers is they like to have a casual costume in case like they're starting to be tired at the end of the day. Do you tend to have one like that on the ready, like a casual one?
Not really so much that, the same kind of one that I might pull out, but it wouldn't really be so much a casual cosplay, more just a lower status one, I guess, or a less complex one that I would be more comfortable wearing in an evening type setting. But I definitely feel that that same, I don't want to be wearing armor at, 11 o'clock at night. But I usually tend to wear a full costume, but just a more comfortable one. Not so much a casual version of a character, but just a lower maintenance full cosplay.
Talking about more complex costumes, have you ever had one that just didn't not work out because it was a bad costume, but just like it was either too bulky or it was too uncomfortable?
I think a lot of the time, if I do something that has some kind of armor in it, it eventually ends up becoming uncomfortable as the day progresses. Like, more so, lately I've been doing a lot of Fire Emblem cosplay, and there's always some kind of armor schematic that's, makes no sense in the real world that I'm just, ends up breaking at some point, or, the armor on shoes is always falling apart for me, so, it's not that they were, bad overall, it's just, as the day progresses, it's like, oh, my foot is just, broken right now, that's fine.
When you have a costume like that with maybe pieces that were more delicate and stuff, are you prepared like to make repairs during a convention?
I usually try to bring something in my bag with me while I'm walking around that could potentially fix something. Yeah. At a recent convention I went to, this past KatsuCon, I was doing a Fire Emblem cosplay and the back part just kind of broke off, so I just pulled, roll of duct tape out of my bag, and I was like, hey, friend, can you just duct tape that for me, So I do try to be prepared, have pins with me in case things end up falling down, then I can just pin them and duct tape them or anything like that. Yeah, I try to be prepared so I don't have to end up, having to take it off midday or having to run to some emergency area, just kind of trying to fix the problem right there.
What was your most challenging costume you made?
I think I generally think about that as any of the more recent ones, really. I try to step up my game, I guess, the more I do it. But so recently I've been adding more that kind of have more pieces of armor, or I did a Sesshomaru from Inuyasha cosplay, and that kind of had a bunch of different pieces. That was really the first thing that had armor, and it had this giant, ball of fluff thing, and it had kind of intricate kimono designs and stuff, and I think about that one as something that took me a while to make. But others that have armor pieces plus maybe a prop or something, I'm not very good at making props, but I have made a few, and they've, for some reason, the only props that I personally have made without my brother's assistance have been giant hammers, but so anything that involves a prop ends up being harder for me, because I think that aspect of cosplay is actually more difficult for me to pull off than the sewing part. So any of those bigger prop type cosplays have been more challenging for me.
I know a lot of young cosplayers and beginners look at photos like yours and others, and they think, well, this person's so good, they're so great, and they think that it's too daunting and for them to do. One of the things I like to ask cosplayers is, have you ever had a cosplay that you just couldn't finish?
I haven't had anything that I have started and haven't finished so far. I try to not overwork myself and to not kind of try to take on more than I think I can chew. So I'm good at kind of balancing out what I can do and what I have the time to do. I'm definitely a completist. I definitely want to finish things that I start or want to.
Shortlisted, the podcast where the hosts take a top 10 list off the internet, because there are a few, and talk about them for an hour. They set the clock when they remember and talk for an hour if the equipment cooperates. And then they shut up whether they've made it through the list or not. They're not racing against time. They're just shortlisting their big mouths.
Hello?
Hey.
I am so sorry. Oh my gosh.
It's all right. My internet goes out right before I get ready to podcast almost every time. It's diarying me.
Gosh.
So I kind of forgot what we were talking about.
Okay, well, let me think. I was in the middle of a sentence and I was like, what just happened? But I think you had asked if there was ever a time I had kind of set something aside because I didn't want to continue it at that moment in time. So should I just jump back into that whole answer?
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay. So like I was saying, kind of, there are times when I'll be working on something and I'll kind of get tired of what I'm doing or kind of annoyed about a certain part of a costume and feel like maybe I'll just kind of work on a different part of that costume for now and just kind of avoid that for a little while. So there are times when I do kind of switch back and forth. If I'm working on, multiple costumes at the same time, I'll be like, oh, or if I'm using the same kind of fabric for two different costumes, I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll make this piece on this one and the similar thing on this costume, and just kind of swing back and forth depending on my mood or what I feel like doing or what I have time to do at that particular time. If I have just an hour or two in the day that I want to jump in and do something, maybe I'll just start a smaller piece of a costume, whereas if I have a full day, I'll be like, oh, let me just start this new thing or kind of a bigger piece to work on. So I do kind of flip back and forth depending on how I feel that day.
So you work on multiple costumes at once?
If I have a few for the same convention coming up, I sometimes like to do that, yeah. But usually I'll try and get, the main bulk of one costume done and then maybe switch over to another one when there's just a few things left for that one. as opposed to kind of jumping between all three at the same time. I'll try and get most of one done and then switch to another one and get most of that one done and then maybe go back to the other one. But if I have multiple that I'm making for one convention, I probably will have multiple started at the same time and just kind of work around them all.
What do you think is your strength and weaknesses as a cosplayer?
I think my strength is probably in sewing at this point, as opposed to prop making or armor making. Just kind of figuring out what items of clothing I need for an outfit, kind of patterning, I guess. I don't tend to use pre-made patterns. I tend to just kind of draw out different areas of the costumes that I need, kind of look at reference pictures and draw out how their clothes look and kind of create that as the pattern and kind of make the clothes out of the fabric and sewing and all that stuff, as opposed to figuring out armor and using tools and stuff like that. I'm not as good with that, so I think it's less of a strength, but I feel like it's not so much a big weakness either, because I am good with my hands, and I do have help from my brother a lot of the time with those other aspects. But I think more of a weakness would be the wig area and makeup areas, because I don't tend to wear makeup even on a daily basis in life, so trying to figure out, cosplay makeup has been pretty challenging for me, and trying to figure out, what best items to use for that, or what's the word, different cosmetics and different brands and stuff, like what's the best for this particular thing. And definitely wig work I'm not so great at. It's kind of, I haven't tried so hard to do bigger wig type endeavors, I guess, but the ones that I have tried to do I feel like I just don't know the right tools or the right strategies to use with them yet. So I'm still trying to learn those areas more.
Do you remember your first not convention, but your first big convention?
I think Otakon is one of the bigger conventions basically in the country, I think. So that being my first convention, actually, and the one I've been to the most times, because I've been to it every year since that first year, that's definitely probably the biggest that I have attended. I know KatsuCon has been getting bigger, but I think, as far as the numbers go, I think Otakon is still probably bigger. But yeah, in terms of that, experiencing that bigness of a convention, it's never really fazed me. It hasn't. I don't dislike the crowds and all that stuff. I've always loved going to Otakon since that first year, and so I do enjoy going to those bigger conventions where there are so many people and so much going on and stuff like that. As opposed, I like smaller ones too, but I feel like I've been to more bigger ones than I have smaller ones, so I'm accustomed to that size difference.
Do you find, because you're going to conventions and preparing all your cosplays and stuff, do you get a chance to enjoy the other aspects of the convention, like merchandise or meeting people?
Yeah, I definitely try to. I'm all about buying that merch, It's probably too much, but yeah, I definitely, as of lately, sadly, haven't been going to lots of panels and doing different stuff. I feel like as the years have progressed, I've become more and more into the cosplay aspect and kind of been doing less of that other stuff than I did in the beginning, because in the beginning I definitely did more, panel-centered things and going to see voice actors and trying to get autographs and buying merch and stuff like that. But lately I feel like my priorities have been cosplay and photo shoots and buying merch, and it's just kind of a cycle with that. But I definitely try to find panels that interest me, and if there are voice actors, I really enjoy going to see voice actor panels and trying to get autographs from some of the more well-known ones that I enjoy their work more. So I do definitely want to try and keep those aspects into my convention experiences, because I do think it makes it a more well-rounded experience and a more enjoyable experience. Some of my most favorite convention experiences that I've had recently have been ones that have had that mix of cosplay photo shoots and, enjoying the aspects of the convention, because it doesn't really make much sense to, pay so much money to go to this convention and not actually enjoy as much of the the convention run parts of it as possible,
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to, it's kind of sad when you pay money and then just go spend more money.
What is some of your current favorite anime?
So my current favorite series is called Snow White with the Red Hair. It's probably a lesser known series, which makes me sad because I've actually made 3 different cosplays from it just within the past year or two, and I've never really seen other people cosplaying it, and I really want other people to join me and to cosplay it with me, and to see more people love that series. So that's something that I've been cosplaying a lot lately, and I've been watching a lot lately. I've probably watched it 7 times at this point in the past year and a half. But so I've been really into that. Lately I've some of my all-time favorites would be Fullmetal Alchemist. Ouran High School Host Club was my first ever anime back in senior year of high school. So that's always got a place in my heart. But lately I've also been into D. Gray Man. And I gave you my Lavi cosplay picture, which is probably my favorite right now because I kind of became obsessed with that character just within the past year. So that's definitely a current favorite. And another thing that I cosplay a lot from is Pandora Hearts. That's one of my favorite series as well. And I feel like I don't see a lot of these cosplays out in the world, but when I do see people that cosplay them, or when people stop me in those cosplays, it's always nice to kind of have that comradeship of, oh, we both love this thing right now. So they may not be super well known, but it's nice to know that there's one person out there that also loves it.
When you're watching not just anime, but other stuff, do you sometimes get the thought oh, I like to cosplay that? Yeah,
I think all the time. When I'm watching a new series, I'll kind of cling on to a certain character, and either I'll see them first and I'll think, oh, I'm interested in this character, and then as I get to know them, be like, oh, I really I kind of really want to cosplay this character. So there's definitely that connection when I'm watching a series, or I'm always thinking oh, just with any series that I like, if my friends cosplayed this, who would I be? Who would I be from this series? Just in case, just have a backup plan. If someone ever asked me to cosplay from this series, I just have a name in my head, oh yeah, I'll be this person, So I think I'm always kind of thinking about that in the back of my mind, who could I cosplay from this series, just in case it ever happened to come up. But then I would always, for things that I am more into, I feel like I see a character that I really love, and I'll be like, yes, I definitely want to cosplay this character right now, and I'll take the initiative to do it. So it's definitely a thought that's always running through my mind when I watch new things.
You spoke of photo shoots earlier, and everybody knows it's starting to be, I don't know, it's a big part of the cosplay community. What do you think about the whole photo shoot, going to conventions? Is that a big thing for you?
Yeah, I think especially recently, that's definitely, a main part of my convention experience, and I really enjoy it. That's one of my favorite things that I've learned to love about conventions is, finding new photographers and trying to get pictures of, character interactions or ships or just nice photos of the character. So it's definitely something that I look forward to a lot when I go to conventions now, because I think it's really fun, and it's a nice way to be able to not only see how well your outfit turned out, if you're doing, just a solo shoot of yourself, it's really nice to be able to see how well your outfit came out overall, and to be able to kind of create or recreate, maybe different moments from a series, or different maybe screenshots of characters or poses of characters that you've loved from pictures, or I do a lot of relationship cosplay duos with my friends, so it's really nice to be able to kind of act out different cute things or friendshipy things or romantic things in photo shoots. And I think that's one of the most fun parts of it, is being able to create maybe content that you wish was in the series with your own characters, kind of be those characters and create those moments that may or may not be specifically from the series, but that you want to be from the series. And I like to kind of recreate specific scenes between characters, or different fan arts that I find, and I kind of save the photos on my phone or pull them up or print them out. At Katsucon, I actually printed out a whole flip book of ship photos for my one photo shoot because I really wanted specific shots of this relationship, so I was prepared for that. So it's definitely a fun thing for me to do, and I love doing it. And as I go to more and more conventions, my days end up being more and more packed with photo shoots, and that's definitely like the main thing I enjoy at this point at going to conventions.
I recently went through your vlog series that you co-host, and I seen where you had a list. What was it? A list of different poses you wanted for photo shoots?
Yes. Yeah. I kind of wrote down, okay, I want, this from this angle, and like this character next to this with this doing this, and I have these thoughts, and I'm like, I'm gonna make sure that this happens.
How'd you get started doing the vlog series?
I don't know. I think so. Our first vlog that we did was a few years ago. I think it was at Anime USA 2014, I think. And I think, or it was 2015. And I don't know why we did it, because I had never watched convention vlogs before that. I think it was me and my best friend Chloe and I who have this vlog channel, and I think that was kind of after we had been going to conventions together for a few years, and we, just one day thought of filming it, I guess. I don't really remember why we started it. But it wasn't until, we did it that one year, and then we kind of meant to do it again, and then it kind of faded off into nothing for a few years, and then we decided, all right, let's like do this again. And I started watching other convention vloggers, kind of the more famous convention vloggers, and kind of trying to figure out what people do in their vlogs and why people have vlogs and what convention vlogging is and what kind of stuff we can do and what kind of vlog we can be. So we kind of took all that information and decided to try it again. I don't know why we decided to try it again, honestly. I think it was just a nice way for us to kind of create more memories and be able to remember our convention experiences more easily, I guess, and just have that documentation of the good times that we've had and the memories. So we kind of are trying to make it more regular now and stick to it and get more content and try and build this following and try and build, interest in the series that we love and the cosplays that we love. So it's been a lot of fun so far.
Yeah, I enjoyed your blooper reels too. I thought.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that's kind of the most fun part of it too, is just kind of goofing around and seeing what happens and the bickering that we have.
Do you think that'll become like one of your regular, like you talk about photo shoots being one of your regular things at conventions? Do you think the vlog will become that too?
Hopefully, yeah. I think that's our goal right now, is to try and film as much as possible while we're at conventions. I think that first year we did it, we kind of didn't end up pulling the camera out a lot, and we didn't really have a whole lot to show for the convention. But lately, with these past two that we've done, we've definitely tried to, have the camera with us and kind of keep recording every, updating it regularly and making sure that we, provide content and talk about what we're doing and show what we're doing. And it's a fun part of it too, because I don't really think of it as like, oh, we gotta update the vlog, it's work to do. It's kind of like, oh, like let's show, this thing, or let's film us doing photo shoots and stuff like that. And it's just it's a fun thing to do at the convention for us, like the photo shoots. So yeah, hopefully we can keep making it a regular part of our convention experience.
With doing the vlog and like your cosplays, A lot of people like sometimes wonder how long it takes like to put together a cosplay. Like, let's take for example your latest one, whichever one's your latest one. How long did that take you to make?
I think so. For this past KatsuCon, which was in February a few months ago, I actually made 5 new ones for that convention, which was, more than I should have at that point. I was kind of struggling at the end of it there, but for the most part, I work on stuff while I'm also in school or working in, having a job. So I don't really have a lot of time to work on things during the weekdays. I tend to only work on costumes on weekends. So judging from that time frame and only having, so many days within a month to work on things, I feel like most things will take around a month to make. Like, each costume itself will take a month or so, but that being only, those 6 or 7 days of the month having worked on it. So if I were to work on something, from day 1 through to day whatever, I think it would probably take a few weeks. If I was working full-time on a costume, it would probably take a few weeks, but the way I have it spread out, it usually takes around a month to do one full costume, I think.
What's the longest amount of time you take on one costume?
I think probably a few months at the most, having it spread out in that way. So it doesn't tend to take me too long. I feel like I'm a pretty fast worker on things, and I'll tend to work, weekend days for like a full 8 hours or so at least per day. So I feel like I can get things done pretty quickly in that amount of time. So I'm probably a more complex costume that has, a prop element and armor and a lot of sewing would probably have taken a few months, I would say, maybe 2 months at the most.
Do you have a cosplay idea, like a character that you would like to do, but it's always like, one day I'm going to do that?
Yeah, I definitely do. I have from a series that's not even anime, from my favorite book series actually, the Artemis Fowl series. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of the main girl character from that, Holly, has always been something that I've wanted to do, and for something like that, it's more difficult for me at this point because there's not really an image, like a picture of that I can look at and draw from. I feel like if I were to do that cosplay, I would have to kind of design the outfit for myself, and I'm just, I haven't quite been like, oh yeah, I'll actually do it. And it not being from an anime, I feel like if I were to do it at a convention, I feel like no one would really know what it is, so I've kind of just never done it so far, but I really would love to do that someday, in the future.
Do you have one that you look at and you're like, I'd like to do that, but no, I can't?
Probably. I've actually, my actual favorite series ever of all things is not anime, it's Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. And I've always, looked at all the outfits in Lord of the Rings, and I love everything about this series, but, I look at all of it and I'm like, I would love to do that, but I don't know if it's attainable to me. I don't know if I can actually do that, so I never have. But that's probably what I would, in my deepest hearts, I would love to do, but will I ever actually do it is another story.
Doing cosplay, what do you think it's like brought into your life?
I think it's brought definitely a different friend group, for one thing. I've definitely made friends kind of through friends. So I haven't, something that I want is to be able to make more friends at conventions or, meet new people at conventions, but I haven't really done so much meeting strangers, but I've met friends kind of through friends. So my best friend Chloe and I kind of started cosplaying together around the same time, and I've been able to meet, her friends, because we don't live in the same state or anything, but, I've met her other cosplay friends who have introduced me to other cosplay friends, and it's kind of like this whole other circle that, we have a lot in common, and we end up being able to bond over these series and these outfits. So it's definitely brought me more of that community aspect. But also I think it's made me a more outgoing person and a less shy person, because I've always would have considered myself a shy, introverted person that doesn't like talking to people, or doesn't like being as center of attention or having attention drawn to me. And, when I go to conventions, or when I first started going to conventions, I thought, wearing this costume out in public and with all these people around, like, it would be weird and people would be staring at me, but, like, it feels so much more comfortable to be in costume at a convention, and I just feel so comfortable and so, so good being at a convention in costume. And it's brought this kind of, I don't know if it's like pride or not pride, but like, what's the word, like confidence, I guess, in myself, and just the ability to be a more outgoing person, I guess. So I enjoy that aspect of it, and I'm glad that it's made me come out of my shell a little bit and introduce me to this new world.
What would you tell somebody that's new to cosplay? Like, if you could give like one bit of advice, it doesn't have to be something big and bold. It could be just something simple. What would you tell?
I think I would say to definitely try it. I know people are kind of afraid of doing cosplay because they don't think they can make things good enough, or they're afraid to buy things because they think that that's not, people will look down on them for buying their costumes instead of making it. But I would definitely say, like, just try it. Just do whatever you want to do, and don't think about what other people think of your cosplay. Just if you're happy with it, just show that you're happy with it, and you'll have a good time. Because it's definitely a fun experience, and if you let yourself have fun with it, then you'll have fun with it, and it'll be a good experience. So definitely try it.
We all know, like, any sort of convention can have, like, weird moments. Like, I don't care what kind of... I've been to library conventions, and there's been weird moments, or, like, comic conventions, or any convention. Can you think of, like, a weird story from one of the conventions you went to?
Let me think. Well, something that comes to mind when you said that was, a few years ago at Katsucon, we were there when the whole fire alarm fiasco happened, which was where some fire happened somewhere and the fire alarm was going off. And, Katsucon is in February, so it's usually cold outside, and it was like cold and windy, and we were all just kind of like confused, and everyone didn't know whether we were supposed to go outside, because it's that kind of thing where if you're in a public space and a fire alarm goes off, you're kind of like, well, is this real? Like, this isn't school. What do we do in a real situation when there's a fire drill? Especially when you're in costume and there's like 30,000 people around you.
Yeah.
So that experience was interesting, and during that convention, I was also feeling kind of nauseous and dehydrated at that, like, right when the fire alarm was going off. So that was an experience just for me personally. I just remember I was kind of like standing over a trash can, like, am I gonna vomit? Like, what's going on? And then the fire alarm, people are like running around. I'm like, what? Like, should we go outside? And then having to go outside, and it was just like so windy and cold, and everyone was just kind of confused and upset, and it was just a whole thing. But that was probably the most, one of the strangest things I've had to deal with at a convention that I can recall at this moment.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing pictures of that. It has to be kind of crazy with that many people in a place and a fire alarm goes off.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, we were all kind of cramped together trying to head towards the exits, and it wasn't really a great strategy for getting us outside. If there had been a bigger thing, I feel like it could have gone disastrously worse if there had been a bigger incident happening, but it was okay in the end, so that's good.
Oh, when we spoke of earlier about enjoying, like, the different things at convention, and you talked about buying merch and stuff, are you a huge collector of, like, anime items?
I wouldn't say a huge collector, but I do like to buy kind of smaller keychain item type things. I'm not a big figure person, but that's mostly just because a lot of my favorite characters don't have figures, or a lot of my favorite series don't have a whole lot of merch. But I do like to collect littler things, keychains or pins. And I actually really love posters. That's probably the most frequent thing that I purchase at conventions is prints or posters from my favorite series. So I would say that I am a pretty big collector of those items. But
You mentioned posters. It reminds me of when I was in college, and I don't even know if they do them anymore, but they used to do the anime wall scrolls.
oh yeah,
Yeah, those were a big deal.
yeah. I have a few big ones of those. I'm running out of space on my walls, honestly, but I keep buying posters. It's not going to stop me.
Do you have a lot of people have talked about their cosplay workshop, and some people it's actually a place in their house. Some people it's just everywhere where they can find space. Where do you usually work on your stuff?
Well, when I first started out, I just kind of took over the basement of my house, essentially. That was when when I was living at college and then kind of actually living at home. So I would just work in the basement of my house at home. But now I'm actually finishing up grad school right now, so I'm still kind of living at home now. But I kind of turned one of my brother's old bedrooms into a new cosplay space. So right now that's where I like to work. I kind of put, a big table in there and my sewing machine in there, and I'm able to have that fairly big space to work in, where I can just kind of spread everything out and have that space just for myself and just for my cosplay stuff. But when I was during another part of my grad school saga, I was living in an apartment, and I just kind of, spread everything everywhere around the apartment. So in theory, I would like to have the space that I have now in my house, my parents' house, where I have like kind of that dedicated space. But, as things change, and I'm going to end up moving again this summer, so I'm not sure what'll happen, but I'd like to have that kind of dedicated space because I think that's easier and makes things more organized.
And to start to wrap this up a little bit, and to thank you for agreeing to talk with me today. Do you have a a cosplay thing that inspires you? Is there a cosplayer or a thing that inspires you? What I mean by some people I know are inspired by some people doing armor, and some people are inspired by certain cosplayers or anything. Is there anything specific that inspires you?
I think mostly it would just be, my other friends who do cosplay with me. I feel like we kind of influence each other, and particularly my closest friend, my best friend Chloe, we do a lot of partner cosplays, and we go to every convention together, and we do a lot of things together. So just kind of those friends that will join me in my group cosplays and will do the partner cosplays with me, and just kind of building off of each other, seeing how they're progressing with their work and wanting to kind of join them and do groups with them kind of inspires me to make sure that my costumes are nice and that I'm worthy of, kind of showing off my skills with them and being able to get pictures with them and stuff like that. So just kind of friendly inspiration, if that makes sense.
One of the things and this will be my last question, but we all had to explain the things we're passionate about to other people who didn't understand. I've had to explain streaming to people. I've had to explain podcasting to people. How would you describe to somebody that doesn't know about cosplay? How would you describe it?
Well, it's always that awkward conversation. I think generally it kind of makes me sad when people don't know that this is a thing, or they think that dressing up or cosplaying is kind of a weird or childish thing, I guess. And whereas in reality it's kind of like, oh, this is like a skill, this involves, work and hard work and skill and talent and stuff like that. So I think when I try to explain it to people, I would say, yeah, I like to make costumes, and I try to make it sound like I don't know. I try to make it sound like it's an important thing that they should, be proud of. Well, not that they would be proud of it, but like something that I'm proud of and something that they should take seriously, I guess. So I try to, I don't know what I actually say to people, but I would like to say that, it's something that involves skill and hard work and, the ability to do, like, it's something that not a lot of people are able to do, and it's a fun hobby, and it's costumes aren't just for Halloween, like, just kind of things to say to them to make them realize that, oh, like, this is a serious thing, and this isn't just a silly thing that people do. Like, this is a real hobby, and it's just as valid as any other hobby. Why should this be taken less seriously than something else? So I hope that when I have to explain it to people that they understand that, because that's what I hope the world can see someday.
Cool. And would you like to let people know where they can find you online?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My Instagram name is Clarinesprincess. I'm also on Twitter at Sashomaru with an underscore, so it's a play on Seshomaru with an A. And you can find me on my YouTube channel with my friend Chloe at Two Zealous Nerds, where we do our convention vlogs. So thank you so much for having me on your show. This was fun.
Cool. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope you feel better, actually.
Oh, thank you.
SNMN is the Tin Pod show where three friends spend a couple of hours together eating, drinking, letting off some steam, and being best friends forever and ever. It's a mess to edit this madness, but a lot of fun to be there.